Welcome to ADSL's Intelligent Communication Environment demonstration we call ICE. ICE has been designed to teach controllers at an early stage in their training proper IKO or FA 7110.65 phraseology. The ICE tool is designed to teach students the proper phraseology and by default learn basic ATC procedures. The ICE product can be standalone or it can be server based. You can put it on a single laptop or you can have it put on multiple laptops with students interacting with each other. Currently I have a small demonstration that I'm going to show you. You're going to see throughout the scenario phraseology will appear. It's the proper phraseology that we want to teach students. The student's going to read the phraseology, and once the student reads the phraseology, the software will give a color-coded feedback to that student. The color-coded feedback is either going to be red, green, or yellow. Green meaning the phraseology was completely correct, yellow meaning the student struggled with phraseology, and red meaning the student completely messed up the phraseology. The parameters of the color code can be opened for students that speak no English whatsoever. English is not their native tongue, so we don't want them struggling inside the training. So we can open up the parameters of the phraseology, and then as the student progresses through their training, we can tighten the parameters of the phraseology, and the student will get a much better rating of their color code. This is a typical airfield that was drawn on paint. You can have your aircraft static or you can have them moving. On this scenario, we're going to have the aircraft static. So you see here, we just basically came up with an airfield. We have two runways. We're going to be taxiing and arriving a couple aircraft. Down here on the bottom, you have the timeline of the scenario. You have the start and stop button. You have the push to talk, or you can use a standard air traffic control push to talk headset. You have fast forward and rewind. Anywhere where you see a black area, that's interaction for the student to talk with the system and learn phraseology. The product also gives the instructors the ability to introduce multiple choice questions and information sessions. Flashcards will appear that teach the students paragraphs directly out of Doc 4444 or 7110.65, and then you can introduce the phraseology from that lesson. Or you can actually ask multiple choice questions, true-false questions, standard questions that you want the student to learn about the airfield, runway layout, taxiway layout, weather, how to read a METAR, how to read an ATIS. So we give you a lot of flexibility inside the product to teach outside a lot of phraseology or stick to strictly phraseology. We'll start the scenario and you'll see the introduction of the product.
Welcome to ICE ATC, the Communication and Procedures tool. The aim of this lesson is to provide you with a familiarization of the ICE software. Please refer to the displayed airport map to help you understand the ATC situation. In order to use the system correctly, you must speak clearly into the microphone.
These flashcards that appear are all done with text-to-speech, so it's basically a
one.
word layout.
You
can introduce anything that you want for the student. We're using it right now just to introduce the product to you. For aircraft that are moving, as soon as the aircraft starts talking, you're going to see that the aircraft starts flashing. So right now we're introducing weather to the student.
Tower, Lufthansa 123 short final, runway 34.
Lufthansa 123 tower, wind 350 degrees, 2 knots, clear to land runway 32.
Clear to land runway 32, Lufthansa 123.
So you see the student gets direct feedback from the product. There's no need for an instructor to be standing over the student's shoulders.
ADSL International Tower, Alitalia 310, request taxi.
Alitalia 310 tower, taxi to runway 32 via Bravo Delta, hold short runway 32.
Taxi to runway 32 via Bravo Charlie, hold short runway 32.
In this instance, I said Delta on purpose. The student was supposed to say Charlie, so you see that the program and the software read that the student said Delta and gave the student the proper grading.
What is the length of runway 32?
Typical example of a multiple choice question. We can fast forward to speed it up a little.
What are the current weather conditions?
In this instance, we're teaching the student the ability to read a METAR.
What is the height of the lowest cloud layer?
Tower, Alitalia 310 holding point runway 32, ready for departure.
Alitalia 310 tower, hold short runway 32, traffic on final.
Roger, holding short runway 32, Alitalia 310.
Lufthansa 123 tower, vacate runway at Alpha 1, stay on this frequency, report runway 32 vacated.
Tower, Lufthansa 123 will call when runway is vacated.
Tower, CRJ 900, on short final runway 32 we have a medical emergency. Require medical assistance on landing.
CRJ 900 tower, roger, clear to land, wind 300 degrees 5 knots, stand by for confirmation of medical assistance. How many injuries?
CRJ 900, cleared to land, we have one male with heart attack symptoms.
CRJ 900, roger.
Tower, Lufthansa 123, runway vacated by Alpha 1. Request instructions for stand Charlie 2.
Lufthansa 123 tower, taxi to stand Charlie 2.
Roger, Lufthansa 123.
CRJ 900 tower, medical assistance has been dispatched to the FBO.
Roger, CRJ 900.
So even though we designed the product to teach your student phraseology, in this instance you see we introduced a medical emergency, which if you look at the documents, ICAO documents, FAA documents, no one really teaches students emergency situations. Lufthansa 123 tower, hold your position for emergency vehicle at your 12 o'clock.
Lufthansa 123, Wilco.
This is a perfect example where we teach student basic procedure also. In this instance, you teach the student that an aircraft needs to be held short of an emergency vehicle because emergency vehicles have priority on the airfield. Lufthansa 123 tower, continue taxi.
Continue taxi, Lufthansa 123.
The important thing to remember here is the scenario is scripted to teach the student phraseology. So if the student says phraseology outside of what appears, the aircraft are still going to do what was scripted. CRJ 900 tower, exit Alpha 3, cleared to taxi directly to FBO, emergency personnel standing by.
Tower, CRJ 900, will taxi directly to FBO. This is the end of section 1. The following section 2 will be used to evaluate your comprehension of English based on the scenario played out in the previous section. Section 2, you have 3 minutes to complete this part, which will begin in 10 seconds.
So now one thing that's very important in air traffic control is situational awareness. So we give you the ability to ask the student a situational awareness question.
Something unusual happened today while you were on duty. Can you take me through what happened step by step? When you are ready to respond, click on the record button once. When you have finished, click again on the same button.
CRJ 900 arrived with a heart attack victim.
Congratulations. You have completed this lesson. A performance report will appear shortly.
So we have designed the product to be a self-taught, self-paced, standalone product. So now what happens is, even though there's no instructor around, a student will get a student assessment feedback directly from their performance. In this student feedback, we take the 6 criteria that a student is graded for level 4 English proficiency according to IKO. In that feedback, there's reaction time, there's pronunciation, there's radio discipline, there's questions, the language proficiency is the situational question, and the validity and accuracy. Now, we give you the ability to put a certain weight to each of those criterias. For a student, let's say is day 1, you only want to grade them on pronunciation. In the student lesson builder, you just check pronunciation, and the score will be weighted on 100% of pronunciation. In this instance, we used all 6 criterias. Now we take those criterias and we break them down to individual scores. So for example, for validity and accuracy, I got an overall of a 95. There's no score for language proficiency because it's a situational question, so the instructor needs to go in at a later time, listen to what the student had to say, then give the student a grade. Then that grade would appear, which would affect the overall 71 that I just rescored. Up here we have individual tabs. On these tabs, just like in ATC, we want to record everything. We grow up in ATC that you record everything so you can learn from your mistakes. So here the student can actually go in, they can see the phraseology that they were taught, and they can see how this system scored that phraseology. The system also gives the student the ability to hear themselves.
Alitalia 310 Tower, taxi runway 32 via Bravo Delta, hold short runway 32.
And if they didn't understand where they made their mistake, they can actually hear what they should say.
Alitalia 310 Tower, taxi to runway 32 via Bravo Charlie, hold short runway 32.
Now in this instance, we also come over here to the scoring, and we see where the product actually scores the student. So for validity and accuracy on this phraseology, I received a 95, and for pronunciation, I scored a 71%. Now as a student, I may challenge that pronunciation score or the validity and accuracy. I just simply check the challenge box. It turns the icon red over here, which then informs my instructor that I've challenged it. On the next tab of the debriefing, I can actually leave my instructor a note that says, James, I want to challenge pronunciation number 2. I believe my pronunciation score should be much higher. I save it into my student assessment folder, and then my instructor has the ability to go in there and override my score, which then overrides the overall score. The next tab on here is all the questions. The student has the ability to go in, they get to see the question they were asked. Over here they get to see what the student answered and what the correct answer was. I believe I answered them all correct. And then number 4 is the situational awareness question. This is where the instructor would come in, can hear the student.
CRJ 900 arrived with a heart attack victim.
Then the instructor can give the student an overall score, which then affects the overall grade of the student. And then on the last tab, this is a word analysis. This is probably one of the strongest features of the product. Any time that the student got a word in yellow more than 3 times, that word will appear here on the word analysis page. And any time the student messed up a word or completely missed a word and it appeared red, will appear here. So as the student checks each word, you're going to get every instance that the student made that word or pronounced that word incorrectly. Alitalia, I have a hard time pronouncing Alitalia. Charlie, the number 12, 2. So we'll take, for example, 2. 2 is a very simple word to pronounce, but what the word analysis is telling me, maybe I don't struggle with the word 2, maybe I struggle with the phraseology of taxi to or cleared to. Both instances, I have 2 of them that are cleared to and 2 of them that are taxi to. So it tells the student that maybe they need to pronounce that group of words, but not just that singular word. Overall, the product has been proven in the market. Recently, ANAV in Italy has bought 358 licenses of ICE for 1,600 controllers. They have officially announced the findings for the training, and 60% of those controllers have received level 4 IKO, English proficiency, and 40% have actually received level 5 IKO, English proficiency. So just the amount of level 5 students receiving their language proficiency actually paid for the whole program for ANAV.